the way they were talking when I was on the floor is like, yeah, you old now, like you can't do it no more. And I was like, huh? If I'm honest, going into last year, I was like, man, I don't know how much longer I'm gonna do this. Like maybe a year, maybe two. What last year showed me was we're still right there. We got Steph, Jimmy, myself. Man, who can't we match up with? The year we sucked, Klay was hurt, Steph was hurt. We were awful. And I had zero interest in playing. That last year he was here, it wasn't Klay. He didn't have his same joy. And when he first called, I said, this Klay, he about to tell me he leaves. And I answered the phone.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Network. Today, we got a special show. I'm going to sit down with a very dear friend of mine, a Defensive Player of the Year, All-Star, four-time champion, Draymond Green. And it's a special show because not only have I got to know Draymond very well over the last 10, 12 years, and he's become a very close friend of mine, but when I look back on Kevin's 3 years in the Bay, I think in a lot of ways it was, for me at least, the best 3 years of my own personal journey in business. And I think for Kevin, probably in a lot of ways, the best 3 years of his career. 2 championships, 2 finals MVPs. And obviously his decision to go there came with a lot of, and still to this day, a lot of. And him leaving came with a whole lot of drama as well. And obviously this past trade deadline, I think we spoke about it openly. There was interest in him going back to the Bay, but I think he felt, and I agreed, that it just wasn't right. And I really do respect the Warriors for hearing us out and giving us that platform to talk about why we didn't think it was right, and not pursuing it any further. And I think that's a testament to how close those relationships that we built when we were in the Bay were. Draymond and I have become very close friends. He's really an exceptional guy, I think misunderstood. If you know Draymond off the court, he's one of the kindest, most thoughtful individuals. He's funny, he's smart, he's curious, and he's got an incredible family. And he's someone that I think myself and Kevin will be friends with for years to come. And today's going to be cool because I'm going to talk to him like I always talk to him, but I'll go a little deeper into some things. I want to obviously talk to him about his run over the last 14 years. I want to talk about the relationships he built, the people from the organization that we all know so well, like Bob Myers and Klay Thompson, and what it meant for them to leave. And we'll talk Steph. And I want to hear if he really does believe that the team in 2016-17 was potentially the best team of all time. So it's going to be a fun one. Please remember, as always, download my show at Boardroom and Yahoo Sports, and you can listen wherever you listen to your podcasts. But I think we should get right to it because, as always, Draymond's got a lot to say. So without further ado, please welcome to the show my friend, future Hall of Famer, the one and only Draymond Green. So welcome to the show, Draymond.
I appreciate you having me, brother.
Of course,
Thank
bro.
you.
I feel like this is long overdue, man. As close as we are as friends, we've never done anything like this.
It's definitely long overdue, but I think when you have the friendship, the relationship that we have, this kind of never comes up. Like we always have the conversation on the phone or in person.
Yep.
I'm excited to be on. I appreciate you having me on the show. And as I've told you in person, I'm so proud with, I'm not allowed to say the word proud, but for lack of a better term, just in everything that you've created and you've done, I feel like I've watched it from really when you just start laying your stake and like putting your picks in the ground, and to watch everything you've built, it's incredible to see.
Thank you.
Makes me happy to call you a friend and a brother, just to watch what you continue to build in spite of everything that was stacked against you, just to see you continue on that grind and go get it. It's been an honor and a pleasure to know you and witness it.
Bro, thank you very much, and I appreciate it. And I appreciate the word proud, too. I think friends can be proud of one another like that. And I remember, like a really pivotal moment, like when you're on any journey, there's certain moments that like to other people may not resonate, but to you meant a lot. And I remember after Kevin's first year in the Bay, when camp started, I was with him in the beginning of camp and you walked by us in the hallway and you was like, damn, Rich, I hear your name everywhere I go around here. You're really doing your thing. And like, you know, when you have a partner in business or you have somebody you manage, you know, you want them to hear that sometimes from other people. And that was the beginning days of our kind of business that we tried to build once he got to the Bay. And I remember you saying that, and it was like a nice wind at my sail, Mo, for him to hear that. So I appreciate that. And you have truly been there from the beginning.
Absolutely. No, and I think like, and even in that moment, right? Like when I said that, when I made that statement, it wasn't a situation of like, oh man, you hear Rich and KD, you know, like obviously we all know, you know, and managing K and working with K and kind of managing his entire life, not just his business, is what you became for Kevin, which is beautiful. And just to watch his growth since you stepped in that role is incredible. But it wasn't like, you know, I'm walking around and I'm talking and meeting different people and they're like, yeah, you know, Rich and KD. It was like, no, Rich.
Yeah.
And when I saw you in that moment, I'm like, man, I hear your name everywhere I go, everyone I talk to, they're saying your name. And that's such a testament to someone who can work with a huge presence, a huge individual like Kevin Durant, and your name be mentioned without his name, but not in a spiteful way, not in a like, you know, at times you hear people name mentioned apart from someone and it's like in a spiteful way. Not in a spiteful, it wasn't in any ill way. It was just like, yo, Rich is doing this, Rich is doing that. And I knew right then, like, oh, this is going to really amount to something. You know?
Man,
And
yeah.
it's beautiful to see.
Thank you. You know, and it's cool. I do think like you've seen this trend in business and in sports, especially, and it's something that I witnessed firsthand when I worked in the music industry, is that, you know, Kevin was really supportive and pushed me to do that in some ways. And I think some of it had to do with the fact that, like, if he had his choice, he's like, man, I'd rather fall back and be in the cut, right? So for me to go and do that was like a blessing for him as well. But, you know, I think that's important. And you saw, obviously, LeBron, you know, did that from day one. And I watched it. Like, I watched Jay-Z do the same thing. You know, and it was that kind of like, man, you go get it, which is all sometimes people need. And you definitely were there at the beginning. And the beginning, which is crazy, is at this point, 9 years ago, right? And that feels like yesterday, man. The Hamptons and the free agency moment feels like yesterday. But you're going into your 13th season in the NBA.
14.
14 seasons.
I'm about to start 14.
14 seasons in the NBA, man. That's crazy.
Unbelievable.
How is your mindset physically and mentally going into this season?
You know, my mindset, physically, I feel great. You know, physically, I feel like I've learned, you know, exactly what, you know, kind of need, you know, to do. I'm sorry, my dog, Ginger, she loves to get in the way.
What's up, Ginger?
But physically, you know, you kind of learn like exactly what it takes to get your body in shape. You know, as you get older in this league, try not to overdo it, but yet, you know, you can't half step either. Like I don't want to be one of those guys coming in and you're kind of rolling in and because of who you are, of what you've done, stuff's just handed to you. Like I always want to be able to earn my keep. I always want to be able to get out there in training camp, on the practice court, and then obviously in games, and people understand why. Like, it's not like, oh man, he did X, Y, and Z, and that's why he's still out there. Like, no, I'm still doing this at a high level, you know, and then I also have individual goals, you know, and so physically, I feel great. Mentally, is the biggest piece. And if I'm honest, you know, going into last year, I was like, man, I don't know how much longer I'm gonna do this. You know, like maybe a year, maybe two. Mentally, that's kind of where I was at. And then as we started playing and the year went on, you know, you kind of regather that love for it. I'm like, oh man, like A, I feel great physically, which is huge. B, like my mental is no longer tired. You know, like I caught that second or third win mentally. And so mentally going into this year, I feel incredible. I'm motivated. I'm excited. I have personal goals that I want to reach. I think, it's always great when you feel like you have a team that you can compete with. I feel like we got a team that we can compete with, put ourselves in position. At the end of the day, what I've learned in this league with the success we've had is you can only hope for a chance to compete and put yourself in position to win because so many things have to go right, right? Like health, you need all those chemistry, you need all these things to go right. You can only hope for a chance to compete. And I think we got that. And so mentally for me, when you're going into it like that and you're like, yo, we got a chance to compete for something, it's all the motivation you need, and so mentally, I feel as good as I felt 5, 6 years ago mentally, which was huge for me and the reason why I think like, yeah, I can go at this for another 4 or 5 years.
Yeah. Do you feel like you've maybe not that you fell out of love with it, but do you think that some perspective, getting older, building the family you've built, has made you love the game again in a different way, like almost in that youthful way?
100%. My kids are starting to get into their own things. They have their own lives, and I want them to understand. I don't want them to kind of when you get to the on the other side of your career, workouts aren't as tough. Scheduling things isn't important, and I don't quite want them to see that because then I'm not a good example for them of how hard you have to work to make.
Mm-hmm.
And so with that, with my family continuing to grow, I want to continue to be example for them of how hard it is. And that one thing alone pushes me to continue to work hard. Like, my son go to the gym with me quite a bit, and for him to see like, no, these ain't easy workouts, and like, by the way, it was way tougher to get here, but like, there's still a certain pace I need to be at. There's still a certain struggle you need to see me go through and then get through, And so just in building the family, there's a responsibility to show them what hard work is. And that pushes me every single day. Because I don't, I always say I don't want to just hand some money over to kids,
Yeah.
my children. I want to hand a work ethic over. I want to hand over a visual, an experience for them to understand where did this stuff come from? Like, it didn't just come out of thin air. I come from Saginaw, Michigan.
Yeah.
Like, how did all of these things come about? And I need them to understand that. And just thinking they're going to see videos of the work and understand that, that's not necessarily how it goes. So while I have good health, while I'm very strong mentally, I need them to see what it takes and how hard the work must be done in order to reach the level that, they'll ultimately want to reach at whatever it is in their life.
Yeah. You said I was a few years ago, and I'm going to mess up the quote, but you talked about like the reality of how hard it could be to get up for a Wednesday night back to back when you're in Sacramento, right? And for fans, I think you saw it in the ratings last year, right? Like the ratings the second half of the season pick up when the stakes pick up a bit. For somebody that's been to 6 finals in 13 years, is that just a fact? Like, is that something that is just a fact? Or do you think that has shifted too in your mind where like now the journey might seem a bit more appealing in some ways because not that you're at the end of it, but because this perspective has changed?
I think the journey definitely appeals a bit different for multiple reasons. You just don't know how many of them you have left. And so, yeah, I'm not right at the tail end, but like I'm far closer to the end than I am the beginning, and so in understanding that, like, yo, how many times do I have left to play in Detroit, where I only play once a year, where I go back home to the state of Michigan and we only play there once a year. How many more times do I have left? How many more times do I have in the Garden? How many more times do I have in Indianapolis and those fans, the Big Ten fans that are, IU fans get to still opportunity to see me play. You don't know how many. And so there's that pushes you. But then I'll tell you another thing too, Rich, is one of the worst feelings I ever had is the year we sucked. It was right after K left. Klay was hurt. Steph was hurt. We were awful. And I had zero interest in playing. I'm like, we just came off of, what was it, 5 straight finals? 5 straight NBA finals and playing with the best team in the world. And now I'm out here playing with, I think, at least 10 or 11 of the guys that we were playing with were out of the league within a year. And no disrespect to them, but they're not Steph Curry, they're not Klay Thompson, they're not Kevin Durant, they're not Sean Livingston, they're not, the guys that I had the opportunity to play with. And so it just wasn't as competitive. And I'm kind of just getting through, And Kelly Oubre, who I had the opportunity actually right after that to be teammates with, the way they were talking when I was on the floor is like, yeah, you old now, like you can't do it no more. And I was like, huh? Like, I'm not old by any stretch of the imagination. And I can still do it, but also playing against you guys don't really get me up. Like it's hard to get up for this game. But I said that to say there's what you realize is the night that you say, man, I can't get up for this game, there's a young guy that's been watching NBA finals after NBA finals that's trying to take my head off.
Yeah.
And that's trying to embarrass me. And I can't quite let the young guy embarrass me and disrespect me like that, and think they can just dominate me because I've been in the league going on 14 years. And so that thing also pushes me, on a given night, there's another young guy that I ain't seen me much. And so he's seen guys get destroyed in whatever way that they got destroyed, but he don't believe it. Just like coming in as a young guy, I didn't believe it. Like, I don't care. I always tell people, when we played OKC, and this always, I'll never forget it. When we played OKC young, one thing about Kevin is Kevin hate for guys to talk that don't have a resume. And so when we played them and I was young and I'm talking to them like I've been here, I remember being that guy, and the guys with resumes looking at me like, yo, you out of your mind, like you've done nothing. But my thing then was, I don't care what y'all have done. You ain't done that to me.
Yeah.
You've done that to all these guys in this league, but you haven't done that to me. Well, the shoe's on the other foot now, and so I've done what I've done to guys throughout this league and the championships and all this thing, defensive player of the year, whatever, but not to those guys. They were at home watching, and they feel differently. They feel how I felt.
Yeah.
And so that thing still to get me up even more, where it's like, all right, like, new young fella, he think it's sweet, let me show him, and I use, you just, which it's like reverse, you come into the league, you find your motivation is whatever it is, and then you find things, the motivation, and then you're like, all right, like, I know what I need to do. And then you get back to that point of like finding different things to motivate you. So like on that soft Tuesday in the city that we don't want to be in, there's something that I found that's going to get me up.
Yeah.
And I try to use those tactics all over again.
Yep. No, that makes sense. And I think that's like the perspective too, right? Like you're able to understand those moments in your career and those moments in time and where you are now and how you relate that back to when you were on the other side of it. And you know the game so well, and you talk about the game, right? Like you are somebody that's been vocal as a personality, as a media distributor of your own content, somebody that controls the narrative that he wants to control, which is powerful. When you think about your own team, right? And I know this is going to be like a weird thing to hear, but you obviously feel strongly about your chances, right? Like that's how you have to be wired. But wearing like your media hat, when you see your team, right? Kuminga's back, you have some more continuity with Jimmy. Do you really see it, like as much as you can look at yourself, do you really feel like, you know what, we got a real shot this year, different than the feeling I have every year where I'm like, nah, we're going to go win this. And I heard Steph say it the other day too, but you guys know. So do you really feel this confidence going into this year?
We definitely feel the confidence. And obviously everybody say every year, man, we want to come in, we want to compete for a championship. When we don't have a chance to compete for a championship, I won't tell you that. For instance, Last year at the All-Star break, I said on the stage during the All-Star game, we're going to win the championship. I wholeheartedly believe that. And I think if Steph never gets hurt, things could look different. However, I do understand that that's a part of the game. And I've benefited before because, Kyrie got hurt and Kevin Love got hurt. Like, do I think we still would have won? Absolutely. But that's neither here nor there. You definitely benefited from those guys being out. So you can't, when the shoe is on one foot, be like, it don't matter. And then the shoe's on the other foot. And now all of a sudden it does. You know, like you gotta take the good with the bad. And so that's a part of it. We weren't healthy. But what last year showed me was, we're still right there. We're still a very tough team to beat. We can still beat anyone. And now you add in the pieces that we brought in. Al. Al brings another big that can go toe to toe and guard some of these bigs. A presence, a veteran presence that we need, stretching the floor. Steve Kerr loves a shooting big. Like that presence, championship pedigree. Like we can use that. And I think you look at a DeAnthony Melton. I still think last year, obviously we ended up making the Jimmy trade and kind of riding the ship, but when DeAnthony Melton got hurt last year, that really took a toll on our team. Like he was really good for us in a big piece of what we was doing. Then he got hurt. Everything changed, and so bringing him back, and obviously he'll be rehabbing, but I think we got the depth to withstand, his rehab. JK coming back, he got his money, got some money in his pocket, but yet still something to prove, and I think it's so much more than just him proving like, oh man, I can go score 20 points. He want to prove the player that he could be overall, and I think that's a big deal, right? You got Brandon Podziemski next summer, he'll be eligible for an extension. That's motivating, and so you got these young guys with certain motivations that I think help. And then Steph Curry, just adding guard depth, adding shooting. Shooting is at a premium, and so when I look at it, and obviously we got Steph, Jimmy, myself, when I take a step back and I look at it, I'm like, man, who can't we match up with? We need to go big. All right, now you throw out, you got Al in there, you got myself. Like, that's fine. I ain't really worried about too many other people's size. Like, I came into this league having to deal with size. I know how to deal with size, and so we can go bigger, we can go small, we can go shooting, we can go defensive lineups, GP coming back, right? Like these are the things that I'm looking at. And so when I take a step back and I look at it from a media perspective, what will I say if it was just me with a media hat on? Hey man, those guys are older, Hey man, how does the pieces fit? Hey, is there still some residue from Kuminga? Is he upset? Are those guys up? That's what obviously the media would say. I know better. I know when it comes down to April, May, June, you're not playing back to back. I know you got to think. You got to know how to get through these series. You got to manage your way through series as well, right? Like I know all of these things when it comes down to it. And so we get to the playoffs, I'll take us against anyone because I think we can match up with anyone out there. So I truly feel and believe like we can be right there this year. And obviously you always need a couple breaks to go your way, but that's everybody.
Yeah. And Steve, has been your coach basically your entire career, except for, the year with my man, Mark Jacks.
2 years with Mark
Jackson. Man, we can have a separate episode about Mark Jacks. You know how I feel, man. You know that.
Absolutely.
What has Steve changed? Like, has Steve had to change? The biggest thing for a coach when they've been somewhere so long is like, you always hear about like tuning out. Have you felt like he's evolved his speech pattern, like how he motivates, how he communicates with you guys?
Definitely. He's had to change. I think a lot of people forget when Steve first came in, he was a first-time head coach. Like he had zero coaching experience when he came there. And so just the evolution of that over the course of the last 11 years alone in itself, soon to be 12 years, in itself, that'll change someone, right? Like the things that you learn. I think in his communication, he's grown so much in his communication on how to communicate with players, how to have tough conversations. Tough conversations is tough for anybody. Like people don't love to have tough conversations, let alone as a coach, right? Like I think he's gotten so much better in those departments. I think he's gotten so much better in just understanding the lay of the land, understanding that the kid that comes in the NBA today is not the kid of yesterday. Like it is a totally different kid that comes in the NBA today than before, right? And so having to learn those kids, right? Like everybody talk about the relationship Jonathan Kuminga and Steve Kerr. And as if all head coach and player relationships are peaches and cream, I'm here to tell you that's complete bullshit.
Yeah.
But Jonathan Kuminga is different than any player Steve Kerr has ever coached. That type of athleticism, that skill set at that age, and the demeanor and mindset that Jonathan Kuminga has is a mix of things that Steve Kerr has never had to coach. And to think that, man, after 6 months, you're just going to adjust to that. No, it takes some time to adjust to that, right? And I think he's adjusted and learned this kid, year after year after year, and become more familiar with how to coach him.
Yeah.
But that takes some time when the guys you coached is Steph Curry, Klay Thompson. Like when me and K are a lot alike, right? Like Steph and Klay are a lot alike. Those are coaching completely different people. It takes some time to figure that out. And what I can say is I've watched him put the time in to work at figuring that out. I've watched how much he cared, how much he come to us. That kind of bridges the gap between him and Kuminga, right? Like Steve just turned 60. Kuminga is 22, right? Like I've seen him come to like us trying to bridge the gap and understand like, hey, so what should I be thinking when this thing happened? Or if he says this, or if he's thinking like that, what should my response? I've seen him do that work, and so I think when you speak of growth, that is growth, and one to make that thing work. I've watched him put the time in. And so I think he's evolved a ton as a coach, even in his philosophies, like our offense, our defense, the things that he's willing to change. Like I think he's evolved a ton, but in this profession, it'll force you to evolve because the characters are constantly changing.
Yeah, without question. I mean, it's a whole other world, a whole other generation. And you also going into this season, like talk to me about what it's going to be like not having Loon around.
Man, I'm so happy we got Al. Al is obviously a super vet and has 9 more years in the league than Loon, but Loon was so vital to everything we did. Loon is like not quite at, and when I say level, I mean years, not quite at the level I'm at, definitely not quite at the level Steph's at, but also not at the level Kuminga's at. He's like right in that perfect gap to be able to understand everyone, right? Like came in and he came in under us. And so he's able to understand us from even a younger perspective, but yet also see the evolution and the growth. But Lou, not even 30 yet, right?
Yeah.
So also can really relate to the younger guys. And he was like that perfect bridge. Lou was like the guy where I always say on the team, man, when you spend, as you know, you spend more time with your teammates than you do anyone else in your life. Like wife, kids, you spend more time with your teammates because you're with them at home. You're also with them on the road, right? When the family's not there. And so you spend so much time with these guys. Little things happen throughout the course of a locker room. I may go crazy on somebody one day because they're doing something that's like, yo, that's not going to help us win, right? And it can be a little too much. And the reality is those guys can then go to Loon and be like, man, that was some bullshit. But they're not necessarily going to say it to me, right? And so then what happens is, A, sometimes people click up, or B, they're just become this, it's the start of a buildup, right? And if you just constantly let something build, eventually it erupts. And the eruption, you can't always contain it. And so where Loon was so special is he stopped the eruption. He heard, man, I saw Dre losing on this guy today because now, yes, that guy was bullshitting, but it made this guy feel this way. All right, I know this guy feels that way. So I'm gonna go tell Dre, hey man, I think you need to do a little less of this thing and do some of this to make this right. He ain't gonna come tell me, man, Jonathan Kuminga said X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
I'll just use a Kuminga as an example. Jonathan Kuminga said X, Y, and Z, and he said this bullshit that you did this, and now you create, he ain't gonna do that, right? He gonna come his way, smooth stuff over here, let this guy know you was heard, it's now smoothed over and it's been dealt with, right? And just that moral compass of the team. And so to lose him is so much bigger than just his play. Obviously the toughness, the rebound, and the screen, and the, doing all the dirty work. We're gonna miss that, of course. But his locker room presence was so huge and so much wiser and older than his age would say.
Mm-hmm.
And just such a special person to have in our locker room that connected all of the dots, man. And like to see him go, I hate it, because he's been here for 10 years, and won 3 championships with Loon. And then obviously that's my little brother, and taking him under my wing when he came into the league, and just watching his growth, seeing people throw the towel in on him and him like, no. Here, take that towel back. You ain't throwing the towel in on me. I'll still be here, and just watch his growth and evolution. Man, it's a tough loss for us, but I'm happy, for him. I know that's a place where he'll go. He'll be valued. He'll play. He'll have so much value in that locker room that I think is huge. And then obviously, Joe D, and my relationship with Joe D, I want to see them do well.
Yeah.
I know Loon will be a huge help for them. Willie G, so I think it'll be a huge help for all those guys over there. And, I'm happy for the outcome of him, to go to an organization that's going to really value.
Looney's not the only one when you are in one place for so long. Even in building my company, like as the company grows, people leave, and you try to maintain that feeling, but there's a level of sadness that comes with it, right? And two of the biggest kind of people in your life over this run in Bob Myers and Klay, also you had to see go. I'd say for Klay, like, putting aside all of what may or may not, I don't even know, like led to it. As a fan, I'm sitting there like, damn, he got to be there with them though. Like, like I'm looking at you and Steph and I'm like, yeah, he got to be there, man. Is that tough on a personal level for you in the same way? Because like, again, putting the business aside, you've got to feel like, man, he got to be here with us.
Putting the business aside, that's my brother. We created ourselves together. Our names are synonymous. Like there's what we've all been able to accomplish. There is no, man, remove this guy, it still happens. It don't. Like the pieces were just like a match made in heaven, and the relationship, like me and Klay the same age. Klay is less than a month older than me. And so we related on so many different levels. And the relationship that we have, I actually talked to Klay more today than I did when he played with. Because what you end up realizing is like, when you see somebody every day, we don't need to talk on the phone. But then a week go by, you like, yo, I ain't talked to Klay. I hit him. And what I will say is, Klay will also contact me, which is like, I would have never imagined Klay would just be calling me out the blue. He'll call me out the blue and talk about something for an hour and a half. And it's like, man, I love that. That's our relationship, that something could be bothering him in his life, and he's going to call me and talk about it for an hour and a half. I'm so grateful and thankful that that's the relationship we built.
Yeah.
And so to think about the journey without him, it sucks. Like, don't get me wrong, like I love my teammates, and we're on our own journey, and he's on his own journey, but just talking holistically, like for someone that you accomplished so much with over the course of 11 years, and by the way, that's just not NBA championships, that's also a gold medal, right? Like, we're synonymous in so many different ways. To like see that break up, it sucked. Now, here's where you put the business aside and the personal also comes into play. When he called, I knew the pain he was in. That last year he was here, it wasn't Klay. Like, he didn't have his same joy. He didn't have everything that made Klay Klay. He didn't have. And so, in sitting back and watching your brother struggle like that, and I don't mean play, I mean struggle with what he feels about himself, what he feels about the situation. To me, that was hard.
Yeah.
And so when he called me and said, Dre, I'm leaving. I was in the car with my wife and my kids, and when he first called, I said, this Klay, he about to tell me he leaving. And I answered the phone. And he said, Dre, I'm leaving. And I was like, man, where to? He's like, I'm going to Texas. And I was like, Texas? Which team? Houston? He's like, no, I'm going to Dallas. And I was like, that's different for you. It was a landlocked city. Everybody know Klay love the water. He was like, man, I just think I need something different, Dre. He was like, I've been in California pretty much my whole life. I just want to go try something different. And I think Dallas would be a great way for me to try it. Still had an opportunity to compete for championships. They got Luka, they got Kyrie. But I just think it's the right thing for me. Now, in most cases, you'd be like, man, you sure, we can still do that? And I was just like, that's great. I'm so happy for you.
Mm-hmm.
Because no part of me wanted to try to talk him into staying, because I knew he needed that so much for him. Like, it was so much bigger than, man, I just want to finish with you guys and finish as a Warrior. He needed that for him. And being a good brother, you got to see past yourself and our situation and what we got. And sometimes it's right. And I said 11 years, it's 12 years. Sometimes it's right to just support and move on and be like, you know what? Because this is the right thing for you, I can accept it and move forward with it. And that's what I had to do in that situation. Like, the absolute wrong thing to do would have been to try to talk him into staying.
Yeah.
Because the reality is, he didn't need to. He needed to go.
Yeah.
Because he needed that to feel like Klay Thompson again.
Yeah.
And the most important thing for me as his brother is for him to feel like Klay Thompson.
Yeah. It's similar, circumstances different, but I felt the level from afar of almost sadness seeing Bob leave, right? And I understood the role that Bob played, not just as a president of basketball operations, but as like a sensei. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And I witnessed it firsthand. And Mike is incredible, and I think it was a tough job to take on from Bob right afterwards. But how much of an adjustment was life as a Warrior without Bob there?
Well, number one, as you know, Bob is obviously the general manager that drafted me, gave me my first 3 contracts. 1, 2, 3, first 3 contracts, including my rookie deal. But even more so than that, like, that's my friend.
Yeah.
Like, that is a legit friend of mine who I still keep in contact with. We go to dinner and sit there for 3.5, 4 hours, and the people come like, hey, you're not kicking y'all out, but it's kind of gotten a little late, and the last table left an hour and 15 minutes ago. right? Like outside of you guys, like, nope, we're gonna get out of here. You're right. We don't live too far away from each other in LA. And for me to see Bob go, like, it was tough because like it's the same guy gets suspended from game 5 of the NBA finals. And he didn't watch at Chase Center. I mean at Oracle. He watched the game with me next door at the Coliseum. You know, like this is the same guy who I know has gone to bat for me over and over and over again. You know, when you have someone in your corner, it's hard to see them go. And so to see Bob go was really tough for me because it was more than the general manager leaving. It was a confidant, you know, it was a friend walking out the door, you know, somebody who I've seen for 12 straight years. When I go to work, all of a sudden no longer there. You know, that was tough for me.
Yeah.
However, a lot like Klay, he no longer really felt like Bob, you know, and so to know that he no longer felt like himself in doing the job, it felt like he couldn't do the job to the best of his ability anymore. As a friend, you're rooting for him to go do the next thing because you know how I know how great he is.
Yeah.
You know, and so kind of rooting for him to go on and do the next thing to continue his path to his greatness, you know, and what makes him feel good. Mike Dunleavy got balls of steel. To take on a job after Bob Myers, arguably one of the greatest GMs we've seen in the history, who came to an organization that was a complete show, that was bottom of the barrel, that was laughing stock of the NBA, and to take that organization to the top and be revered by everyone, also a Bay Area native. And then, you know, you walk into this situation for Mike, like there's no real win. You know, like if you win, everybody gonna say, oh man, but Bob drafted those guys. And like he took it head on, started putting his own touches on it, didn't with 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 all due respect to Bob, but started putting his own touches on it and has stood by everything he's done. He's been incredible. Communication, he definitely learned a lot from Bob, which you should do. But his level of communication, like he will get in there and have a tough conversation in a heartbeat. And there's just so many GMs that'll hide from the tough conversations and they trade guys away. They do this thing. They, you know, they let problems build up and then act like, oh man, it's because of that problem that we need to do this. And the reality is you could have put that fire out a long time ago. You didn't want to have the tough conversation. Mike is going to have a tough conversation, you know, and Mike's going to make the tough decision. And I can respect that, you know, like I said, for him to take over the role that he took on, it's a very thankless position because of the success that came right before him. And he just took it on. He's took it on with grace. He's taking it on with dignity. And he's taking it on like, no, I'm not okay. I'm not just going to stand pat. I'm going to continue to swing for the fences.
Yeah.
And I can respect that, man, because like I said, you could just kind of stand pat and be like, yo, we got these young guys, we got Steph, and just blank, nah, he's trying to make that thing work, you know, plugging here, pulling there, plug. I can respect that, man. So Mike has been incredible. But just to see Bob lead, like, you know, when you're going through this run, you envision it like, yo, we all going to lead together. And then you kind of start to see one domino fall and then another domino fall. And it's like, dang. But, you know, we still got some of our core pieces still here. We're still trying to make it happen.
And you still got the two main dominoes. And, you know, I think a lot of people talk about you and Steph's relationship on court. You know, you're so, you know, you'll scream from the mountaintops about how you feel about Steph and his place in the game. But it's a really special relationship. And one that, like, you know, when you watch from afar, when each one of you have had moments on the court where the other ones come to their defense, you realize that there's like something incredibly unique about the relationship. What do you think, and I'm sure you could answer this for hours, but like, what do you think really like encapsulates why the two of you have such a special connection in that way?
Well, I think number one, we understand our differences. Like we understand where we differ and we never ask one to be the other, right? Like there's never any pressure on Steph to do what I do, to be who I am, to carry what I carry. There's zero pressure on him to do that. There's probably a negative, if you will, on him, a negative number, if you understand what I'm saying, on him to do what I do, and vice versa. There is zero pressure on me to do anything that Steph Curry does. And we understand that and we carry that delicately. We carry that with so much pride and admiration for each other and for what, I for what he brings to me that I don't have, for what I bring to him that he don't have. We are so like that matters so much to us. There's such a at the heart and the core of our relationship is appreciation.
Yep.
It's appreciation for what each other bring. And then there's admiration. I know I have a deep admiration for who he is as a man, for who he is as a basketball player, but even more just who he is as a person. There's a very deep admiration that I have for all of those parts of him. And I think there's a very deep admiration that he has for me and how he's watched me go about my life and the different challenges that I've gone through and overcome. And with those two things, it's hard to not appreciate and look after each other, because what happens to the other one means so much to it's me. What happens to me means so much to him.
Yeah.
What happens to him means so much to me. And with that, any difference we can always see right past because at the core of it is appreciation and admiration.
Yep.
And man, like you said, I can go on and on for hours, but like there's nothing that can change that. When you have the relationship that we have for as long as we've had it, now 1 year, 14 playing together, man, there have been times where things have happened with me, and I'm like, and he's like, damn, that's some bullshit, and I don't want to stand by that, and it's like, guess what? There's zero pressure for you to stand by, right? Like because I am a man and I can handle my own. I don't need you to stand by that thing, right? Vice versa. That's just the nature of a relationship over the course of 14 years. Everything don't go right. And at times there's things that happen that could derail this thing, but we ain't letting that happen. Like we're gonna bring this thing back together. And guess what? When I've crossed some line, I have no problem going to sit in his face and saying, I'm sorry. I f***ed up. I know how hard this has made it on you. I am going to fix it. I'm gonna do everything I need to do to fix it, and we're gonna move forward. Right? Like there's no ego.
Yep.
Like Steph the big dog. And I respect that wholeheartedly.
Yep.
By the way, there's no one that will honor him as the big dog more than me. And I think with that, that just allows us to keep blossoming because there's never a fight for power, ever. Like, no, I'm gonna do all the dirty work, by the way. I don't want you handling anything. I'm gonna do all this groundwork. I'm gonna do all these things. I'm gonna handle all of this stuff. Once I've handled all of these things, now I'm gonna just bring it to you. All right, this is what happened. This is what it is. I need you to say yes or no. Whatever you say, that's what we're doing. But I've handled all of this. I ain't need you to do all this dirt. I don't need you to get in the mud. I just need you to say yes or no. I've gotten it, all these things out the way, and I've brought it to here. Now it's on you, yes or no. Yes, we're gonna do that. No, we're not doing that. Cool. This is what we're doing, and we move forward, right? Like that's our relationship. And it works, it's beautiful. We're so different that it makes us so much alike.
Yeah, it is amazing to see. And I had the privilege of watching it, firsthand and then, from afar as a fan. Is this 2016, 2017 team the best you ever played on?
The best the NBA has ever seen.
You feel that way?
The greatest team the NBA has ever seen. No question about it. There was nothing nobody could do to beat that team. Too much skill, too much
Yeah.
best team the NBA has ever seen. No question about it.
And
if you thought you were going to put your best defender on Steph, well, good luck. We got Kevin. If you thought you was going to put your best defender on Kevin, good luck. We got Steph. Oh my God. Y'all thought y'all were going to put two guys. Klay's about to give you 40, right? That team, man, there was just nothing you can do to stop it. You can't really send a double. All right, you double off me, fine. I'm gonna use one of these guys to make y'all pay for that double. So good luck with that. That defensively, right? What we were able to do defensively. You got Klay ball hawking any point guard, literally ball hawking. You got Kevin is an incredible rim protector. You got Kevin on the backside. You got me on the backside. You got Andre, who can also ball hawk a guard. But look at the length that we have. The shortest guy we have out there is Steph. Steph, I know there's this common misconception that Steph is small. Steph not a small dude. That's the smallest guy we got out there, right? And Steph, the effort that he give on defense and the understanding that he have of what's going on, it was hard for teams to score. But even when you did score, you weren't going to score enough to keep pace. You got to get stops, but you can't stop us. And so, no question, the best team the NBA has ever seen, and obviously the best team I played on.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to let you get out of here, even though we're going to do this again, because I feel like we could talk for hours. I want to know this on a personal level. I want to know this on a personal level because I feel like your opportunities are limitless. I've watched you, similarly to what you said to me in the beginning, is not only have you had this incredible career, but your ability to build a network and a community for yourself in terms of the extensions of opportunity that you have, what you've done from a media perspective. You're just such a natural, and I think you'll have whatever opportunity you want covering this game when you're done. But you've also built an incredible business that, you don't even promote all the time because I feel like you don't have to. If you could paint a picture for yourself, 5 years after you retire, whenever that is, what do you imagine yourself doing, owning, having, taking up your time and filling a bit of the void that, you won't have basketball every day? Because that's a real piece of the pie, right? You have done all these other things. But I always talk to Kevin about this. I'm like, yes, you're set for life. Yes, you've built this incredible business, but only you can figure out what you want to do to fill that piece of the pie that was the work every single day of your life.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, number one. I definitely am building a media business, which, is done fine, and we continue to grow. My CEO of that business is Dana Hooper. She's done an incredible job. I want that to be great. Obviously in the sports world, I want to continue to stay around the game and speak the game and teach the game and give to the game in any way that I can. That doesn't always have to be the way we see it today. Media is constantly changing. Opportunities are constantly growing. And so to even act like I know what that looks like 10 years from now, I don't. I do think I take pride in being a great leader. That's something that I've always tried to work on, as I've continued to grow as a human being. And I understand that leadership spans across the world. Leadership in basketball is leadership in business. Leadership in basketball is leader of men, leader of people, right? And so I never want to put that aside, right? I think I can run a really big company because I know how to lead people. You know, it's not that I'm the smartest person in the world, but when I look at some people that like some of the most powerful leaders of the top companies in the world, it's not that they're always the smartest person in the world. They know how to lead people and they know how to trust smart people, right? I don't go up shooting a million threes. You know why? Because Steph Curry can do that. And Klay Thompson can do that. And Kevin Durant can do that. What I'm gonna cast a million of them up for? But I know how to lead where I need to lead, you know, and I don't need to try to overstep in that lane just to say, man, I could do this too, or I'm the leader. You know, I don't need that, right? Like, go, man, go, you know, and so I I ultimately want to run a business one day. I don't know what that business is. Obviously, like I said, I'm building my own business, but whether that's my own business or a Fortune 500 company, I don't see why I can't do that, you know. And so I have some. I always set lofty goals for myself. I'm going to continue to build what I'm building, and yeah, I never close the door on anything. You know, I always say I'm always open for a conversation. And if that conversation makes sense and I can help and I can help grow something from here to here, like that's fine. Like this franchise, like helping this franchise go from the dirt to the mountaintop, like that was fun. You know, like the joy you get from that, it's been incredible for me. And so um, I want to continue to do that in my life. And whether that's one time, two times, three times, who knows? But I have lofty goals and yes, I always want to stay around the game from a commentary aspect as well, but there's a lot of other things that I want to do also.
Yep. Well, you know, you've won championships, made all-star games, made all NBA teams, won Defensive Player of the Year. You'll be a Hall of Famer. But you know what I think is really the most incredible? And for me, this is like what impact is about. They're going to talk about you in 100 years. No matter what's happening, no matter whatever the state of the world is, they're going to talk about you in 100 years. And, you know, you've made a real impact in the sport, in our society, and you've made a lot of noise, bro. And I think that's what life is about. You've made a lot of noise and people know who you are. And I think people, you know, have acknowledged that you've been necessary, which is a compliment. You've been necessary for all of us. And, you know, I appreciate you. And I'm excited to keep building with you as a friend, bro. Say hello to your wonderful family. And I'm going to ask you one odd question before we get out of here. I just had this conversation last night. If I'm on a deserted island, I'm taking 3 artists to listen to for the rest of my life. I'm taking Jay-Z, Bob Marley, and Stevie Wonder. Those are the 3 I'm taking. Jay-Z, Bob Marley, and Stevie Wonder. You know the 3 you're taking off the top of your head?
First, thank you for what you just said. That means the world to me, especially from someone that I respect the way that I respect you. So thank you. The three artists that I'm taking is Jay-Z, no question, Chris Brown, and Jay-Z, Chris Brown, and Tupac. I gotta take Tupac. I love Tupac. It took a long time for me, like, and growing up, I listened to so much Tupac. It took a long time for me for somebody to pass him, but then Jay, like, you just gotta respect Hov did pass him. But Pac, Hov, and Chris Brown. Those my 3 artists.
All right, my brother. Well, I appreciate you, man. Thank you for joining my show. Thank you for joining my network. Appreciate you for being my brother.
I appreciate you, bro. Thank you for having me. Man,
of course.
Incredible what you're doing. Love you, brother.
Love you, bro. Talk to you soon. Well, thank you for joining another episode of Network. Man, what a conversation with Draymond. I appreciate you guys supporting. As always, go and download and subscribe at Boardroom and Yahoo Sports. You can always listen wherever you listen to your podcasts. This is Rich Kleiman, and I appreciate you joining my network.